What is the creepiest glitch in the Matrix you have experienced? I used to have a pet turtle when I was younger. One morning I woke up and was walking to my kitchen when there was my turtle crawling on the floor. I picked him up and looked in his aquarium and my turtle was still there. My parents didn't buy me another turtle and we have no idea where it came from. I borrowed a pair of Apple earbuds from one of my friends. I usually keep earbuds in my pockets and one day after being home all day I pulled a second pair of identical headphones out of my pocket. It has happened twice now. I have 2 pairs of Apple earbuds and I gave the other pair back to my friend. I would assume I just grabbed another pair by mistake, but I don't get out much and no one in my family owns any Apple products. Not sure if this counts as glitch in the Matrix, but when I was young, I was sitting watching TV when I heard a few loud bangs as if someone fell down the stairs. I ran out to see but there was nothing there. Just as I went back to sit down my brother fell down the stairs. Seems like the audio is just out of sync with the picture. I was trying to sleep late at night and the t-shirt that I was wearing was getting itchy. So I took my shirt off while still in bed and threw it from the top bunk of my bunk bed. I heard it drop to the floor but I kept on hearing it drop to the ground over and over again and this went on for a while. I was wide awake and I knew I wasn't hearing crap. Still confused about it but I never seemed to mention it till today. Took off my glasses because something made me laugh so hard I cried. Went to bathroom, washed face, came back, glasses gone. 2 weeks pass, I have new glasses. Got home from a friend's house, take off shoes, call from friend less than 5 minutes later, forgot something at his house. Go to put on shoes, missing glasses folded perfectly, sitting on top of my shoes, so calculatedly evenly split between both shoes it looked like an art display. For the longest time in my life when I would hear random noises that were out of this world, sometimes it was static or explosions. I found out later that I have a disorder known as exploding head disorder. It's basically your brain glitching when transitioning into sleep. Scared the crap out of me before I found out. Several years ago I stopped to get gas on my way to meeting my GF at the time for dinner. This was a little before smartphones started coming out so all I had was a silver flip phone. Getting out of the car I managed to drop it on the ground and then kick it right as a car drove by. It was run over and shot out from under the car's tire across the gas station lot. I found it all scratched up. It wasn't smashed, but wouldn't turn on. I spent most of the dinner annoyed because I was semi-broke and didn't want to have to pay for a new phone. When we got back to our apartment the first thing I saw walking in was my silver flip phone sitting on the kitchen counter. Somehow I managed to hallucinate dropping and then kicking my phone, watch it get shot across the lot, and then finding an exact duplicate of it. The antenna on the top even had the same bite marks from where my cat had tried to eat it. Or else my phone spontaneously cloned and teleported itself onto my kitchen counter. Nah, replacing damaged cell phones is standard NSA practice when it comes to wiretapped individuals. Every morning on my way to work I'd go through a shopping mall. On a bench in the mall there would sit an elderly man appearing to wait for someone. The guy was fairly anonymous but always had some small flair that made him look like he was trying to be hip but not really making it. A golfer's cap, a vest, logger boots, etc. Every morning when I walked by I noticed him and always wondered who he was waiting for. For 4 years as I walked by I never saw him actually meeting someone. I get a new job and start work in another part of town. 3 days in when I walk from the subway towards work the same guy is sitting on a bench waiting for someone. It's you from the future trying to get you to start a new trend obviously. I share my name with my great grandfather on my father's side. I never met him, he died 20 years before I was born. He was apparently 6 feet tall, eccentric, obsessed with intellectual pursuits, but was so prone to getting lost and thought that he would forget to do important things. The rest of the entire family is fairly short. My father is otherwise the tallest at 5 feet 8, very straight-laced, conservative, blue collar. Then there's me, apparently the second coming of my great grandfather, height, tendencies, personality, general appearance and all. A week before I got married, my brother was going through old records and discovered my great grandfather's wife, who no living family member ever met. She died young in the 1930s, had the same name as my wife's. Am I just reused content? Creepy, you're a post. I was 12. was spending the day at an amusement park with a neighbor and one of his classmates. I'd never met the classmate before, but he was a cool guy and we're all chilling, going on roller coasters, spending money on the stupid ring toss game and not winning anything. And then we're going to go grab food, and he was about to go grab some chocolate bar and I went, dude, you're allergic to peanuts, because he was about to eat something with peanuts in it. I'd never met the guy before, my friends never talked about him before, but not only did I have the feeling that this guy was allergic to peanuts, I turned out to be accurate. He was like, dang, how did you know? And we agreed that there was no real explanation. Life is just weird sometimes, and went back to riding roller coasters. Never saw that guy again. Something vaguely close to that happened to me at work. I was on break with a co-worker who I've known for about 6 months, so well enough to at least known her name. I try to ask her something, space out, and call her Avery. Avery is the main character of a book she is writing. She hasn't mentioned the name to anyone. That was the only time I have ever gotten her name wrong. I once threw a light bulb into an empty trash bin from a few feet away, but I didn't hear it land at the bottom of the bin. I immediately decided to pick it up to take note of what type of bulb that was so I could replace it. But it was gone. Totally disappeared. My roommate witnessed this too, and we never found it, even as we were moving out at the end of the semester. When I was about 15, I remember having a dream, but all it was black and talking. I remember hearing my mom saying, it's almost done, you're doing great, it's gone, but I didn't think anything of it. About 3 months later my earrings got embedded inside my ears and I had to go to hospital to get them cut out. While there they sprayed freeze spray onto my ear. The spray went into my ear and obviously touched my eardrum, knocking me out, but I could still hear things. While out, all I saw was black, and my mom said the exact same things to me that I heard in my dream a few months before. No one believes me, but it was crazy. Similar thing happens to me every 4 or 5 months. I just chalk it up as deja vu. I occasionally get flashes or visions of things that happen again later. Recently, having a specific conversation at work. This was not a normal or routine conversation like did we get any mail. It was an unusual circumstance that led up to it, so I knew how it was going to go down, and it did exactly that way. On the creepy end of the spectrum, I saw myself at a friend's funeral while he was still alive. He died unexpectedly a few weeks later. I knew that a client of mine would die within a year, and he did. At the time he appeared perfectly healthy, but within the year he was diagnosed with cancer and passed away. I know that one cloudy morning, I will get a call in my car that my stepfather has passed away. He is in his 70s and suffers Parkinson's, so this one isn't that paranormal, I don't think. The creepiest one has yet to be fulfilled, and that is an image I have of a blue pickup truck on the wrong side of the road coming straight at me. If I do die in a car crash and it's with a blue pickup, can someone please post it so I get posthumous karma? Sat down with food on a stick, closed my eyes, opened them 3 hours later, still at my PC, food entirely missing. I guess I blacked out, but I have no idea why I would do that. You were abducted by aliens, that accounts for the missing time. Chances are they ate your food and used the stick to probe you. As a kid, at a really young age, I used to have incredibly realistic dreams of things that hadn't happened yet. To clarify, I had weird dreams of completely mundane things generally, and then they would happen shortly after, usually within a couple days. For this reason, it became hard to differentiate between dream and reality. As a result, I spent years believing my brother had stabbed me in the back with a butter knife. But it, from what my parents tell me, never happened. I guess it was just one of the dreams. It's so weird though, because it was just so real. The memory of being stabbed is stronger than most memories, and every so often, this spot on my back, right where I had dreamed I was stabbed, well, it tingles. He's thinking of you. I watched a little boy run up and kick a soccer ball. Then everything stopped for the slightest of milliseconds, and I watched him run up and kick the ball again. I saw the exact same moment happen twice. It was like time skipped like a needle on a record, but I was unaffected. I didn't move, but I wasn't frozen and then replayed like everyone else. I was an observer with full control over my body. I've never experienced anything similar ever again. It was so clear. I still have the frozen moment in my mind perfectly. I started panicking immediately after it happened to anyone near me. I had to sit down. It felt so incredibly real, even if it was just a hallucination. What did everyone do for that second? There were no other glitches, no clicks forward, so I had an extra second that nobody else did. I watched one moment twice. Am I a second older than the rest of the world? Did I travel back 1 second in time? Did something unimaginable happen to me in an alternate universe? Did I have a mini stroke? Who knows? I don't know if this can be classified as a glitch, and I have a feeling this might be common for a few other people, but here goes. Since I was young, off and on, I've experienced what is apparently called depersonalization. The very first time, I was young, probably 6 or 7 years old. I remember clearly it was a very sunny day, and I was walking somewhere holding my mother's hand. It was the first time I'd been allowed to wear sandals instead of shoes. Where I lived there was a lot of broken glass on the pavements. We were waiting to cross a road and it happened. This sense of complete alienation from myself. I was not me. This body wasn't mine. I was just occupying it and I was something more. It was a very strange experience. It's happened probably 2 or 3 times since then. Just a feeling that I am unfamiliar with my own self, a stranger. It's also happened once with my brother, who I'm very close to. That day I looked at him and a feeling of who is this? Just a strange person who I call my brother. It lasts just a few seconds and is quite eerie. It's the familiarity you have about yourself and others, I suppose. The attachment disappears for a few seconds. Would be very interested to see if anyone else has experienced this. More commonly I think it happens with words. It loses its meaning and appears strange or foreign, which I've also experienced. I get this every now and then, more so with other people. Sometimes I look at friends, family or my girlfriend and have that detached feeling for a few seconds. It's happened once or twice with myself as well. Like for a second I don't know who I am. Weird. When I was 10, I was homeless-ish and lived in an 8-foot camper. My bedroom was the top bunk thing. I'm laying there and my jeans were annoying me, as they were next to my head, so I flung them towards my feet. They flew back at me immediately and went back where they were originally. This happened 2 times in a row. I have no idea why they would move on their own. This still creeps me out. Maybe you accidentally threw them up in the air instead of at your feet. One night, when I was about 18, I guess I was out for a drink with a friend. Just had 1 or 2 beers, not much. I went back home and I felt allsy pretty quickly watching Skins. Lights on. Around 2 or 3 AM I woke up in a heartbeat, like if I just had a nightmare but not remembering anything about that. I notice the lights are on and a second after, all my room goes dark. I feel pretty stressed out at this point, so I get out of my bed to put the lights on again, wondering how this happened. At this moment I start to feel a pain in my hand, and when I finally put the lights on, I take a look and I'm seriously bleeding from my hand. No idea how that happened again. Went out of the house, smoked a cig and went back to sleep. Never had any explanation. El Diablo has your soul now, son. I was a kid and my mom and I were outside taking pictures of old cars to sell in the backwoods area of our yard. All of a sudden my mom hears rustling in the bush and she tells me to run. I had flip-flops on, so I kicked them off and booked it. Behind me, I didn't hear my mom, but I heard like a rusty clanking sound, like something jumped on the cars. While running, I didn't see my mom. I got into the house, panicked, and there my mom was, sitting at the table reading the paper. What the heck? Whatever is now pretending to be your mom, that's not your mom. I used to live and work at Esbrook. I had been struggling with depression for quite a while, and one day as I was crossing some sand dunes with groceries, I began to feel like I'd had enough. I wanted out and I figured I'd do it when I got home. It was at this point that I noticed something pretty big coming towards me. I looked up to see what it was but didn't see or hear anything unusual. Nevertheless, I sensed that whatever it was expanded even larger and larger as it grew nearer, and I felt my whole body begin to vibrate. It was like being in a really heavy storm or something, because this thing was immense and powerful. At first I thought I was in the way and was going to be annihilated, but somehow realized that this whatever it was going to pass me. I then had an extremely strong feeling that it had noticed me and briefly glanced in my direction. A feeling of overwhelming love and compassion, with a hint of teasing humor, like I was some silly little kid, washed over me, and a word boomed in my head. Breathe. So I did. I breathed in as deep as I could and felt months and months of sadness and loneliness and self-loathing simply and immediately replaced with a pure feeling of joy. I was weightless. I was happy. Nothing else mattered. And as I stood there, the whatever it was strode past me on its way to something I somehow knew was really important, leaving me with tears streaming down my face and all my groceries spilled in the sand. Amazing. You're not the only one who's had something like that happen, right at the peak of their depression. But that is a beautiful experience. Whether or not it was a tangible thing matters not, because either your brain saved you, or something did. About a year ago my mom and I were in the first parking space area of a small shopping mall. She was getting things ready for the store and I was waiting. The space in front of us was parked a large white SUV. I can't explain why, but I had the urge to study the SUV when I usually don't even pay attention. The family that owned the SUV came out and it was a father, infant in a carrier and a little girl. The little girl stared at us the whole time her father was getting her in the car. She had this huge oversized bow in her hair and a side ponytail and just kept staring. Even as they walked to the driver's side she didn't take her eyes off of us. The father packed her up. My mom also stared at her. It was so strange. We went into the store right after the whole family was in the SUV. When we went to open the door the same family came out. Odd little girl, father, baby and father was still holding shopping bags. My mom and I looked at each other in horror because it took him 5 minutes to pack his kids in that SUV. How could he get out and run into the store in the few seconds it took us to walk to the sidewalk in front of the store? We weren't the only ones who saw it. A worker from the food place next to the store saw it and we all exchanged looks of horror. I have no idea what this was, but I can tell you that very few people have believed me and my mom. What if the little girl was staring at you and your mom on the way to the SUV because she saw you two at the entrance of the store before? My mum used to work during the day and leave me home alone when I was around 12 or 13 and too old for daycare. She would ring the home phone periodically throughout the day and make sure everything was alright. One day I'm home alone and the phone rings. I pick it up. It's mum. We have a short, succinct conversation that's basically everything going alright, yeah, okay, don't answer the door if anyone knocks, etc, etc. Very normal conversation. It ends. I hang up and go about my day. Not even 15 minutes later the phone rings again. I pick up and it's mum again. We exchange hellos and I jokingly say, must be a slow day, you literally just rang me. And mum goes very quiet for a minute and then says, I haven't called you today. My blood went cold, and to this day I still don't know who called me. We came up with a secret password after that. When I was 14 or so I went to sleep at my typical time and woke up 2 days later in the morning. I went downstairs panicking and asking if my family knew I had been sleeping for 2 days and what had happened. The question was ignored and they told me to sit down and have some breakfast. That happened to me too. Although I was like 7 years old, went to bed normally on a Tuesday, woke up just before noon on Thursday. The only person in the house who acknowledged it whatsoever was my brother. I had a dream about marrying my husband before I even knew he existed. Even in my dream I was asking people who this person was, and when I actually met him I had to refrain from freaking out. He is literally the man of your dreams. I had this crazy vivid dream in 7th grade. I dreamed that there was a white cargo van parked outside my house. A man got out, walked to my house, broke in, then went to my brother's room and killed him. I woke up freaked out. It was 3 AM. I couldn't sleep and went into the kitchen, turned the light on, and a few seconds later the headlights on a white cargo van outside flipped on and it sped away. A little late to the party, but going to share anyway. So, I have one nice suit. I have a total of 3 or so, but most of them are 6-10 years old, a few stains, and don't quite fit right anymore. I got a new one 2 years ago, and the thing fits me freaking great. I look sharp. After my dad's funeral, I took it to get it dry cleaned at the same dry cleaner I've been to for the last 15 years, a half a mile down the street from my house, but couldn't really remember picking it up. It wasn't on my mind, as I hadn't needed it for anything. About a year later I had a funeral to go to and I could not for the life of me find my freaking suit. I took every piece of clothing out of my closet, one by one. I meticulously scoured every surface in there trying to find this suit. and it's nowhere to be found. I go check all of the other closets in my house and the coat closet in the front hall. I mean, I tore this house apart. Checked my closet multiple times. Freaking nothing. This suit is not in my house. I'm like, alright, maybe I just forgot to pick it up from the dry cleaner. Long shot, but I might as well go ask. So I head to the dry cleaner, and I ask, hey, long shot, as it would have been over a year ago, but is there any chance I might have left a suit here I forgot to pick up? She tells me that she can look up my name and phone number, and after receiving both, she tells me I've never been a customer there. I'm like, what do you mean I've never been a customer here? I know it's been a year or so, but this is literally the only dry cleaner I've ever been to. I live a half a mile down the street. I've been coming here since I moved here 15 years ago. My parents both came here. My sister comes here. There can't be no one in the system with my last name. I ask if owners or systems have changed recently, and she says no, that they've been the same for the last decade, and if I have ever been a customer here it would be in the system. I give her my last name again, parents' numbers, etc, and nothing. No one in my family is listed as ever having dry cleaning done there before. At this point she's looking at me like I'm insane as I'm standing there trying to understand why and what the frick happened to my suit then. I leave and go home, ready to throw in the towel and pick something else to wear. I walk into my closet, and my suit is sitting right there in the middle of the rack in my closet with a tag on it from the dry cleaner that just told me I had never been there. Dog, you need to take that tag into that dry cleaners and ask them what's wrong with their computers. I was watching TV when I was about 11 when I had this sudden compulsion to turn off all the lights in the house. I literally jumped up and ran from room to room. When I got to my bedroom on another floor, I saw that my net curtain had blown over my desk lamp and was smoking. It caught fire the second I got to it. I managed to put it out just in time. I only vaguely remember the incident, but one night, very late, both of my grandparents were woken up by a loud sound. My grandmother swore it was a shotgun. My grandpap said it was a car backfiring since there was no one nearby who would be shooting. We lived pretty much far from anyone, but near a highway. They bickered over it a bit, then went back to bed. About 15 minutes or so later the phone rang. It was my aunt. Her husband had been shot with a shotgun by a neighbor just 20 minutes before. The thing is, they live 7 states away. Okay, I have this memory and no one will believe me, but here we go. When I was probably 10 or 11, my mom was harping on me for not doing my chores. She was downstairs with me and I stormed upstairs to avoid her. When I got upstairs she was in the kitchen, doing dishes. There are no other ways to the second floor. She smiled and I almost shat myself. Walking with my daughter on a side street in the French Quarter in New Orleans late at night, back to the hotel, we hear a drunk couple giggling and walking quickly behind us, obviously getting ready to overtake us. So we step aside to let them pass, only to turn around and find that no one's there. There were no side streets or alleys until further up the block, just shutter doors with steps going up to them. Dude, the acoustics in New Orleans is super weird, especially the French Quarter. When I traveled there I could literally hear muddled conversations and music blocks away near the St. Louis Cathedral. I was working with a friend on building some shelves in a cubbyhole in his garage. He had 2 planks, each of which he was going to cut in half to make shelves. He cut one in half, brought it into the garage. Then we decided to make lunch. Came back out and there were no cut shelves, just 2 whole planks. When I was younger my parents took me to see The Polar Express. It was a great movie. In the early summer morning I thanked her again for taking us to the movies. She had no idea what I was talking about. Later in the year around Christmas, we went to the movies. I sat in horror as I watched The Polar Express the opening week and knew exactly what was going to happen. My mom has some friends that I've known my whole life. They're her age. Mom was single so they used to babysit me sometimes. I went over to their apartment for Halloween when I was 4 and they took me trick-or-treating around their apartment complex. Fast forward 27 years. I'm married to a girl I met in college, who had been born in the city I was raised in but almost immediately moved away, was less than a year old. She lived in other parts of our large metro, DFW, and the LA area growing up. She's heard my mom and I mention these family friends occasionally but never met them. Wife and I throw a Christmas party to celebrate our new house. My mom asks if she can invite said friends, so I said of course. They arrive and we get to chatting. They ask about my wife's unusual maiden name and if she knew people who have the same first names as her parents. These family friends of ours were her parents' neighbors, as in share a wall, literally the only other door on the second floor of the same building. At the time my now wife was born. I'm 3 years, 9 months older than my wife. Our family friends' neighbors had an 8-month-old infant when I went trick-or-treating at their house. I met my future wife as an infant out of total happenstance before not meeting her for another 18 plus years. I once got into a weird, it's complicated thing with a girl who later turned out to have been born the same day, in the same hospital, and our mothers shared their hospital room with us for the first few days of our lives. She literally was the first girl I ever met. It's kind of a pity that never went anywhere. I was once walking in a park at night when I saw something green shoot up into the sky, like a firework, but it didn't burst. It temporarily lit up the sky and then it got dark again as the flash faded. Moments later I heard a very loud sound like a transformer having power go through it, and the next time I blinked it was bright and in the middle of the day. Not sure where the lost time went, and I didn't feel tired or anything. Unfortunately I didn't have any obligations like work or anything, so I really have no idea of knowing. Abducted by aliens. I used to get freaked out by the same customers coming in and getting the same products several times a day. Then I remembered I work in a liquor store and all my regulars are alcoholics. So I'm a glitch in your matrix. I had a dream of my ex-girlfriend before I met her. Red hair, hazel eyes, standing at the corner of where 3 streets meet. She was holding a purple luggage bag and crying. Turns out, 2 years later, that was where we'd be when we broke up. Funny enough, several years later, I now live at the apartment building where that corner is. I smoke in the back lane to avoid looking at it. 2. I experienced something like this. It was the first time I tried acid and I vividly remember hallucinating a girl and that I'd meet her on November 27 later this year. Let's see if it happens. One night, I was startled half to death by the sound of a train horn outside my window. I was not living anywhere near any sort of railway, and nobody else in my household had heard it. When I was a kid, my family came upon the aftermath of a horrific car accident. Traffic was backed up and we slowly crept by while my parents tried, and failed, to distract us kids from the carnage. Later that night, the accident was on the news. Small town, not much else to report. They showed the accident scene and all 4 of us gasped, shouted at the same time, those aren't the same cars. Everything else about the accident scene was identical, but the makes, models, colors of the cars were completely different from what all 4 of us remembered. We consulted amongst ourselves and we all remembered the same thing, but the image on the screen was totally different. We talked about that for months. Either this is a pretty serious glitch, or the news station ran the wrong B-roll clip. I was having a dream where I was singing. I woke up very suddenly from it, and then I heard some super loud screaming. It went on for a few seconds and it was enough time for me to shoot up and still hear it for a few seconds. I wasn't alone in the house and after the screaming stopped it was dead quiet. No one else heard anything. Screwed up REM can cause auditory hallucinations as you fall asleep and wake up. I've had it before while working overnights, not fun. I remember a time when I was about 9 or 10 and I was riding in a work truck with my father. He suddenly got a call on his phone, and when answered it, it went straight to speaker and a deep distorted voice started yelling at us to get the frick out of the truck or I'll fricking murder you. The wordiest part was that my dad didn't even react, just grabbed the phone and ended the call. Dad like this crap again and puts his handgun off safety. Bit late as usual, but I thought I might tell mine. Obviously I don't remember this, but when I was around 2 or 3, my great aunt and grandmother had just returned from Scotland and the family was invited to watch the projection slideshow, showing my age, at my grandparents'. At my age I wasn't very interested until there was a picture of a large pond lake with some ducks. I piped up, I know that place, of course everyone said that's not possible, it's on the other side of the world. I then proceeded to get cranky and say, I used to live there with my mummy with the white hair, then something about my horsey and that I lived in the castle up the hill from the pond. Sure enough, the next slide was of the lake with some ruins further up the hill. My auntie apparently freaked out, turned the projector off and would watch the rest. I have a very vivid memory of a very tall, thin, elderly African American man sitting in a wide green armchair. This man has glasses, wearing a button-down shirt and dressed slacks. I described this man to my parents one day around the age of 5-7 years old. Gave as much detail as I could, and my mom goes down to the basement. She comes back with a single photo and shows it to me. It's exactly who I described. Same man, same chair. The man is my great-grandfather. He died in 1977. I was born in 1991. Maybe you saw the picture when you were a small child and the memory stuck for some reason. When my friend gave a nodding "what's up" to my dog and the dog did the same thing back. Amazing. That's not a glitch. That's a feature. Me and my friend were at a Chinese restaurant, and we ordered a General Tso chicken dinner and a shrimp lo mein dish. When we sat down, we took out both boxes and set them on the table about 2 feet apart. My friend opens the first box and we see a shrimp lo mein dish. It has all the things in there: noodles, shrimp, fried rice. He closes the box and opens the other box. Inside that box is another shrimp lo mein dish. Shrimp, noodles, fried rice. Oh, I think they must have mixed the order. I was just about to say this when my friend says out loud, "Looks like they made a mistake and gave us two," as he opens up the first box again. Inside of it is a General Tso chicken dinner order. General Tso chicken, white rice, and an egg roll. He froze and looked at me. I looked back at him, and we sat in silence. It took us 5 or so minutes to collect ourselves. I have no idea what the frick happened. These are my favorites. The slightly off, everyday glitches. Not creepy, but so vivid and distinct that I still think about it years later. I had a, subjectively, long, involved dream where I was a vendor in a fish market. I remember getting up early, dressing, doing a whole morning routine, going to get tea, heading out to the docks, buying fish, loading them in a cart and going to get ice, then haggling for ice, buying some less fresh fish while I was at it, then going to a market to my stall, setting up and selling fish all day. It was so real. I talked to friends, smoked nasty cigarettes, haggled customers, ate lunch, had tea and just lived through the day. At the end of the day, I cleaned up, counted my cash, paid the stall rent, went home, cooked some of the fish I hadn't sold, sling with some veggies and rice that I'd traded for. I drank more tea, relaxed for a while, then drew a hot bath, soaked and smoked some more cigs, then went to bed. The next morning, I woke up refreshed, ready to go down to the docks to buy fresh catch, except I was in my house, next to my wife, truck parked outside, and it was Saturday, no work. My wife and I were getting geared up to go skiing in Oregon and the car was already packed. Weird thing was, in the dream, I was single, and a smoker. I'm not. And the whole long dream had been in fluent Chinese, the effortless kind of fluency that only comes from a lifetime of speaking it. Oh, and I had been Chinese. I'm a big, hairy white dude, somewhat fluent in Spanish, and I know a little bit of Russian, but I've never. It was just weird. I've never worked in a fish market. I wonder who I was. I wonder what that was. Meanwhile in China, a Chinese fish vendor woke up after having a dream about him being a big, hairy white dude with a wife and a truck. Haha. I knew my uncle had died. My mom had called me and told me the news. It was very sad. She told me in the middle of work and I told one of my co-workers. He expressed his condolences on my loss. A couple weeks later, my sister mentioned my aunt and uncle doing something. I said, "But he's dead." And my sister said, "No, he wasn't." I called my mom. "No, he wasn't dead." To this day I'm still not sure how much of it my brain imagined and how much was real. Did I really talk to my co-worker? Was I even on the phone with my mom at all that day? It still freaks me out knowing that my mind could fabricate so complete and real a memory like that. I've had a couple of dreams which have been so vivid, I swore they were real. It might be this. This happened to my dad, so it's not exactly a personal story. Anyway, my dad was driving down a long lonely highway in Ohio doing about 90 in his Z28 with a radar detector. Rolling hills and whatnot meant that cops could hide at the bottom before you could see them and slow down. So, all of a sudden, His radar detector starts blaring and he slams on the brakes. Right over the hill, there's a squad car running radar. He's super relieved, but when he looks at the detector, it's not even on the windshield. It was unplugged and in the glove compartment. What the frick? Posted this in a previous sub a while back, but I'll post it again as it fits here too. I had just turned 22 and my parents had sold their house and purchased a place out in the country. On the property there was a big shed not far from the house that I decided to turn into my place. Now I felt kind of uncomfortable in the shed sometimes, but my dog kept me company so it wasn't so bad. Anyway, I had been in there maybe 2 weeks and one night I'm on the computer. My dog asleep at my feet and I need to pee, so I get up and go outside to pee. It's a beautiful clear night and the stars were incredible. Next thing I hear the shed door slam behind me. I turn immediately and try to open it, but it won't budge. Now from inside the shed I can hear my dog start to growl. Quietly at first, then louder. Now he's barking and I'm panicking trying to get the door open. I must mention that I'm 6'5" and well built, play sports etc, but even ramming my full weight into the door won't open it, and I'm really panicking now as my dog's barks turned into whines, then whimpering, then silence, and with all my might I slam into the door and it flies open. The light is off inside now and it's pitch black. It won't turn back on and I'm in complete darkness. Can't see my dog anywhere and I stumble around trying to find a torch. Finally I find it and pick it up and turn on my torch, and I wasn't prepared for what I'd see next. My dog had literally squashed itself into the furthest, darkest corner of the room, eyes closed, and is shaking violently. I immediately moved towards him, and as soon as I got within reach of him, he leapt at me into my arms and wouldn't move. I picked him up and I swear I've never ran so fast in my goddamn life. I never stepped foot in that shed ever again, and my dog wouldn't even go near that part of the property. I don't know what happened in that shed that night, but I'll never forget it. This isn't a glitch in the Matrix. This is a straight up demonic story. Holy crap. I was sitting in my car with just my dad and I distinctly heard my sister, who was at home, say, "Are you guys almost home?" I'm scared in a very specific, concerned tone of voice. 2 seconds later, my dad's phone rings. Guess who's on the line? My sister. She said, "Are you guys almost home?" I'm scared in the same concerned tone of voice. I was pretty freaked out. Something like this happened to me too. I was in the basement with my girlfriend and had a vision of my sister coming down and asking me for the phone. In doing so, she caught me getting a little too snuggly with my GF. After this little vision, I instantly jumped up, grabbed my phone and ran to the stairs, and there was my sister, just about to come and ask me for the house phone. I was catching a SkyTrain in one particular city about 15 minutes from where I get off. While I wait, there is a woman with glazed eyes asking people for money. She came up to me, stopped briefly, and asked, "Excuse me, could you spare some money? My brother is in the hospital and I'd like some money to buy him some flowers." That's rich, I thought. Drug addicts are getting more and more obvious with their lines. "Here's $5. Gave it to her without even looking her in the face, convinced of her intentions. Anyways, my train pulls up and I get on. I look through the glass at her walking around asking others for money as the train pulls away. The train arrives at the station 15 minutes later, and I walk down and out to the bus stop. There is only one bus the direction I'm going, and just my luck, it is there waiting when I get off the train. So on the bus I hop and wait for the bus driver to finish reading his paper before the doors close and we embark down the highway. About 5-10 minutes traveling, the driver pulls over for a routine stop. The doors open, and to my complete astonishment the woman from the SkyTrain walks into the bus, a dozen roses in hand. She looks me right in the eyes as she walks past to take her seat. How in the blue heck did she get there? I took the train before her. I watched her at the train stop from inside as we pulled away. I went over a river. I caught the first and only bus going this particular direction. And not only did she beat me there, she had time to go to a store and buy a dozen roses. To this day I have no idea how this happened. You met God and passed the test. When I was a teenager I had 2 really intense dreams one night. The first one was about an online friend of mine calling me to say she'd broken up with her boyfriend, and I sang a few lines of Seals Don't Cry to her over the phone. The second dream was finding a real life friend dead body floating in her bathtub. I didn't think anything of it up until I logged online that evening and the online friend came online to tell me her boyfriend broke up with her. I immediately asked if I could call her, and she said no. I remember thinking that it meant something, like I could change it. Not long after, my phone rang, and it was real life friend from the dream calling me. I was completely freaked at this point, but talked to her normally. She was just talking about school and crap, up until I realized I heard a splash in the background. I asked her, "Are you in the tub?" and when she said yes, I felt like my heart had stopped. I asked her, "What did you do?" She didn't answer me right away, and then after a very long pause she told me she'd taken an entire bottle of pills and chased it with mushrooms and vodka. She'd gotten scared waiting for it to hit her, so she called me so she'd hear someone's voice. I hung up and called 911. By the time they got there she was unconscious, but alive. Today she's a mom to a beautiful little girl, and she's okay. What the fuck? One morning when I was 15 my dad looked tired and stressed. I asked him what was up. He said he had an awfully realistic dream of me killing myself. Said in the dream he came into my room to find me hanging from my neck in the closet. It bothered him so bad that he actually came and checked on me while I was asleep. Not too big of a deal but not cool as I thought. 20 minutes later my sis comes into the room, fresh from waking up. She looks at me and first thing she said was, "Dang Ross, I had a weird dream. I came in your room and you had shot yourself in the head. It was messed up." I told her that dad had a dream about me killing myself last night too, and had him explain it to her. We just kinda sat there in an unnerving silence. I've never been suicidal but that freaked the whole family out. I spilled chocolate ice cream on my leg. I wiped it off and there was still a pale brown stain in the shape of the ice cream splotch. I told my mother, who said it was a birthmark. I will swear under oath that never before that moment did I have a birthmark there. My mother has a scar behind her knee from a cut. When I was a preteen the exact same scar appeared on me in the exact same place. I swear it was never there before and I would have remembered being cut that deeply for sure. I was sitting in my office one day when my desk phone rings, and it is my under sheriff asking me to bring him all the reports, dispatch logs, any documentation ref to a specific. So I get it all together and start towards his office. I meet him in the hallway and hand him the paperwork. He asked what it was. I told him it's the documentation you asked for. He then swears he never asked me for it, that he had just arrived and had not called my office. He was on his way down the hall to ask me to get it together. My guess is a brain fart by him, or aliens. This didn't happen to me, but to my dad. He works for a heating and air conditioning company, so he often has to go out to people's houses to fix things. About 5 years ago he told me he had a bizarre dream where he went on a call to an elderly woman's house. He'd never seen the house or this woman before, but he said it was bizarre because of how realistic the whole thing felt. He fixed her boiler in the dream, chatted for a bit, and then left. About a week later his company gets a call from an elderly woman needing her boiler fixed. They send my dad on the job. When he arrived, he said it was the exact same house from his dream and the same old lady. He knew her name before he even had to ask and knew his way around the house without having gone inside yet. When she opened the door, she said, "Hi Gary," and when he asked how she already knew his name, she said she had a dream last week that her boiler broke and that my dad is the one who came to fix it, so she just knew that would be his name. Two complete strangers, never having met each other, had the exact same dream that they would meet each other, and they did. The whole thing is so crazy. LOL, out of all the things that people could have a premonitory shared dream of, it had to be a regular everyday event. When I was little, 6 years old, my parents took us to Disneyland in Florida. We went to go watch one of those shows with parrots. During the middle, I had to go to the bathroom, so my mom took me and left my dad and my sister to watch the show. When we came back, the entire stadium was empty, so we thought the show ended and we went back to the bathroom area to wait for my dad, thinking that's where he must have taken my sister since it's the only bathroom station in the area. We sat on the bench and waited for 2 hours before my mom gave up. This was pre-cell phone. The only remarkable thing during this time was that one of those iguana lizard things was fighting a squirrel behind the bench, and I watched that with great joy. I actually remember this. We did some other stuff, then went back to the hotel room to wait for them. The entire time my mom was annoyed at my dad, saying it's so irresponsible of him. A few hours after we got back to the hotel room, my dad and sister, who is a year younger than me, came back and obviously they started arguing. both saying they were waiting for the other at the bathroom. Me and my sister on the hand started telling each other about the lizard and squirrel we saw fighting. Apparently, both of us saw what happened from the same vantage point on that bench. My parents stopped to listen to us and asked us to clarify. We both saw the same lizard, same squirrel, fighting from the same point on the bench. It was one of those inexplicable occurrences, but they didn't give it further thought until me and my sister brought up the remember that time we saw the lizard and squirrel fight, and my mom was like, yeah, that was a weird day. It is one thing for this to have been some sort of crazy time-space anomaly, and that would be freaking crazy and awesome. But honestly, I really want this to just be you both waiting at the bathroom practically next to each other without realizing you were both there, because that crap is funny. I woke up from a dream where I died, and when I opened my eyes all I saw were faces all over the walls staring at me. It was terrifying. I got up from my bed and turned on the light. The faces didn't go away. I left the room and made sure I was awake. I wrote on my computer, drank some water, and when I went back in my bedroom the faces were gone. I believe this is a sleep hallucination, which I had another experience of as well. Was going to be late and was coming up with a story in order to avoid getting in trouble. Story I came up with is that as I was being pulled over by a cop for speeding, someone rear-ended him and it hit my vehicle. Had a pretty big dent in my truck, but no one knew what I drove yet as I was new to the job. 5 minutes later I got pulled over for going 75 in a 65, and lo and behold someone clipped the cop car and pushed the car into my truck. Ticket was excused. Boss told me it was okay. Got that bumper fixed for free and $1,000 from the dude's insurance company, the one who hit the cop car. And also naked women bathe me. Cross his fingers. I was waiting tables about 12 years ago, and my co-worker forgot to put in a food order for a 3-top table. He also forgot what the order was. I was laughing at him, stressing out trying to figure it out, and I said it was probably fried mozzarella, a cheeseburger with no onions, and chicken fingers. I was completely joking, and that was their exact order. It freaked me out. I made him let me run the food to the table to make sure he wasn't fricking with me. This just happened quite recently. I was heading towards a place from a train station that was being remodeled, and there's a huge chunk that's under construction. I got a bit lost in the area and my Google Maps was telling me that I should go through one path, but I couldn't since the whole area was basically off limits and I should take a detour. This was some busy underpass with people going to the platforms, and there was one big temporary plywood wall with big signs of under construction, unauthorized access, forbidden, no entry. This part got weird. That plywood wall had a plywood door, and people were entering exiting it like a normal busy door. Completely normal looking people that looked like they don't belong in a construction area. Even some old woman entered it. So then I thought that the map is working fine, so I decided to go through the door, and it got even more weirder. On the other side was just a huge empty area, completely under construction. An area of sand, piles of gravel, some pillars and construction in the distance. The edge of the underpass was completely unfinished. I was really confused since I wasn't far behind the last person who went through the door and I had no idea where the guy went. There was no path. It didn't seem to look like there was some path where the people would have gone. There's a big gravel road in front of me going a bit to the side, and the map was telling me to follow some similar path. So I thought maybe I should check it out a bit. Except frick no. A big Caterpillar tractor sped up along that road and I wasn't planning to walk near that. I saw the guy in the tractor looking at me confused, so the next thing I thought was to go back since I shouldn't even be here. I opened the door and a few people walking away to a platform looked at me weirdly like I did when I saw people entering the door. No one entered after I went through nor when I came out. So after that, I just had to take the detour since I was in a hurry anyway and forgot about it for the rest of the day. I was listening to my friend talk and he suddenly just lagged out, I guess. He sounded like a static phone and then repeated a couple of words. Sometimes I swear that lights flicker in whatever room I'm in. It's like someone turned all the present lights off simultaneously. I even asked those around me if they saw the lights turn off. I don't recall blinking any time this has happened either. I wonder if I have many nanosecond blackouts. It's people trapped in the upside down. When I was a kid, I had Metroid Fusion for the Game Boy Advance. That game was hella hard for. I don't know. 8 years old me. There was a final boss, a spider, that was difficulty spike in an already difficult game, and I got stuck there. Then, one day, I lost the game. Since I hadn't finished it, and I really liked it, I convinced my parents to buy it again. I played and finished it. I was quite happy. Then, one day, in my grandparents' house, I found a Metroid Fusion cartridge. It had a single save file more or less around the spider boss. I thought I had 2 save files, but whatever. I had found my game. Fast forward a couple of years and I get a call from my great aunt. She was moving, and when removing some furniture, found a GBA cartridge, Metroid Fusion, that her grandson told her was mine. I didn't believe her, of course. I went to see it. Exactly, that was my original cartridge exactly as I remembered it. I have no idea where the cartridge I found at my grandparents' house came from. I asked every possible cousin, not that we are too many, like 4, everyone I could think of, and nobody had ever owned the game. Heck, only one of them had a GBA. I'm sure there is a reasonable explanation, but I can't find it. I had a copy of Pokemon Ruby version flat out disappear. I know where I put it and no, nobody moved it. To this day it's still nowhere to be found. This happened in 2004. Was on a road trip with family once. We stayed at a hotel for a night. Our room was nothing more than 2 beds and a restroom, with the biggest mirror on across from the beds. Everyone went to sleep but me. I stayed up playing a mobile game I was addicted to at the time. At about 2 AM I went to sleep. When I woke up, I noticed something was just ever so slightly off. The mirror was gone. The room had 2 separate bedrooms, and there were 3 beds. Apparently I was the only one who noticed it. BC my family called me crazy. Still confused as frick to this day as to what happened. A little backstory. My sister was born with heart complications and nobody thought she'd survive unless she went under a certain surgery, and even then she'd be heavily disabled and not live past 12. My mom told me that my grandmother prayed and asked for my sister to live and to take me instead. Please let her be healthy. She died August 2007 and my sister was born a few months later, same year. My sister lived without the surgery, is now 10, and is healthy as she can be. The doctors said they didn't know how it happened and called it a miracle. Now for the creepy part. One day my sister and mom were doing something, I don't remember, but my sister turns to my mom and says, "A long time ago, I was born in 19XX. Forgot the year. That was the year my grandmother was born." We never told her that. Another time she said her favorite food was X again. I can't remember. That was my grandma's favorite food. Again, never told her that. She did the same thing again except with my grandma's old home in Afghanistan. Never told her about that either. My sister doesn't even remember saying any of this. We asked. Then again she was really young when she said these, so maybe she legitimately forgot. Whatever the case, it's creepy but also interesting and a little heart-wrenching warming. Sister to live and to take me instead. Please let her be healthy. I thought that your grandma prayed that you, Scrimish, should die. SMH. I'm not too religious but these stories make me wanna pray right now. So creepy. As often as every couple days I'll vividly remember being exactly where I am as it is, but at a different time, like repeating a cutscene in a video game. It's frequent enough I've repeatedly questioned the legitimacy of my existence. My friend and I were talking to our roommate and her girlfriend one night. Roommate had just received her new phone and was sitting in bed using it while the 4 of us chatted. So, roommate had sat her phone down while we were all chatting. She goes to pick it back up and it's gone. Like, she had just sat it down for a few minutes tops before she noticed that the thing has poofed. I call it for her and we can't hear it. We take the comforter and sheets off the bed and shake them all out. We look under the bed, behind it, everywhere we can. That phone is gone. Even though we hadn't left her room at all during our conversation when the phone disappeared, we tore apart the whole apartment trying to find it. Finally, we decide to try her car. It was in the locked trunk. We lived on the 3rd floor and were all in the same room watching her use it before it teleported. To this day I cannot explain what happened. Was watching TV with friends and we landed on some old 80s movie I used to watch over and over but hadn't seen in a long time. I had the dialogue memorized and it all instantly came back and I knew what was going to be said next. Here's the freaky part: we changed channels and kept trying to find something to watch. I noticed that everything we watched was the same. I knew every line of dialogue as if I was remembering it from having memorized it. These were all things I had never watched before. Here's the real freaky part. It started happening even when my friends were talking. An instant before they said anything, I knew word for word what they were saying. The effect only lasted an hour or so, but it was bizarre. Same thing happens to me whenever I'm watching TV on edibles. I've even written lines down before they're said to prove it. My wife always thinks it's because I've seen the show, but I swear it even happens on things I've never seen before. Not sure if this counts. I went into sleep paralysis in my dorm room and heard my roommate ask if I wanted donuts, and she started elaborating on donuts. I couldn't move, speak, or breathe the entire time. When I woke up, I asked her if she was talking to me about donuts. She says, "Number," but that's weird because my boyfriend just texted me pictures of a donut he just got. And then later that day some random people came up to me and offered me a free donut. Other dreams: I had a dream about a hamster running on a wheel. When I woke up my roommate said someone threw a hamster down the trash chute. I also had a dream about a white rat. And the next day my friend texts me that his white pet rat had died. I have this urge to send you a dozen donuts. When I was a teenager, I was in my room and decided to go to the kitchen to make a sandwich. I looked at the clock before I left, 6:48 p.m. Went to the kitchen, made an awesome sandwich, got some chips, and a drink. This probably took me at least 10 minutes. When I walked back into my room, the clock still said 6:48 p.m. I stood there for a bit really confused, then it turned to 6:49. Went to sleep at 10 p.m. Woke up at 9 p.m. on the same day. I still don't understand. I woke up with 3 shirts on and 5 pairs of underwear. I was like 8 and thought the Boogie Monster did it. Scarred me for life. The Boogie Monster works in mysterious ways. I was completely convinced that my family had told me that my uncle died. I even bummed out about it and talked to people at work about it. Then 2 weeks later my sister brought him up, and I said, "Wait, he's dead. What are you talking about?" and realized that my brain had just fabricated all the memories. Very spooky. At work, bored as heck, check my contacts for someone to talk. Scrolling down I notice a high school GF's name who I lost touch with for a couple of years. I mean, no phone calls, no discussions with common friends about her, nothing. The very moment I saw her phone number, boom, she rang. I saw my female doppelganger once. We were walking past each other in a train station. We both turned around to look at the other person after we had passed each other, jerked our heads and scrunched our faces like, "Do I know you?" Gave a surprised wide-eyed look like that was pretty weird. Then another slightly more exaggerated that was even weirder, followed by an audible in unison "what the frick" and nervous laughter. Followed by a quick turn around and hurry away and one last "what the frick was that" look back as we scurried away. If a bystander saw it they would have thought it was scripted. Weird crap, man. You were near a mirror. I had the exact same day twice. They weren't dreams. I got a cool new toy in the form of a Batman keychain. My brother had Robin. We were jumping from one bed onto another in our small room pretending to fight crime, and I dropped my keychain on the floor in the corner of the room where my bed was against the wall. I could not find the dang thing. I walked downstairs and my mom had it. I have no idea why. I walked into the kitchen to tell my mom I lost it and she was holding it. To this day I have no idea why she had it. She doesn't remember the situation and didn't give me a real answer when I asked how she got it back then. I'm still completely freaking baffled. Laying on my bed with the door open, I hear something moving in the house. I was alone and get nervous. I stare at the end of the hallways, but then my dog ambles across going to another room. The sound was just him scratching. I watch him go into the other room and lay down. I glance up 3 seconds later and he is walking down the hallway again from where he originated, not where he had laid down. Like he teleported back to a spawn and walked back there again. Needless to say, I lost my crap. When I was a kid I would always have the same recurring nightmare at my grandpa's house. The dream was always about a man accidentally catching himself on fire and burned to death. Couple of months ago I found out that a man recklessly caught himself on fire while he was building my grandfather's house. My grandpa even put out the fire and held the guy before he died. This happened about 2 weeks ago. It was hot and there was a storm approaching, so I decided I would jump in the pool real quick and be out before the hail starts. After about a minute in the water, I look up to check and see 2 eagles just floating there, not moving at all, like time stopped. I'm sure they were just riding the current, but they didn't sway even a bit. Not left, not right, not up or down, nothing. I was like frick it, dived underwater for a while, and when I came back up they were in another part of the sky, again not moving. Those are just the NSA's Freedom drones. 2 days ago I grabbed a Calvin and Hobbes book while searching for pregnancy books for my manager whose wife is pregnant. I haven't touched this book in years. I open it up and I find an old birthday card from my wife saying, "I hope you have a wonderful weekend. She died 2.5 years ago. Today is my birthday." I was at a bar once and I saw someone walk up the stairs with a similar haircut and glasses and thought, "Ah, there I am walking up the stairs." It was really weird. I actually thought I was watching myself walk up the stairs. I was running to catch a football in elementary school and it was super far away. The next thing I remember is me having the ball in my hand and everyone just donning a shocked expression. I asked them how the heck I got there, and they had no clue. It was fricked up to say the least. I thought I was Neo for a good while. I started that app Tinder recently and was chatting with one of the first girls I matched with. I asked her about a tattoo on her arm that I saw in one of her photos. It looked to me like a flaming top hat, so I jokingly asked if that what it actually was. A few hours later, I was sitting in my bed reading the book The Unbearable Lightness of Being when I see a phone notification. She'd responded, "How no, it is actually a bowler hat and arms. The artwork from my favorite book The Unbearable Lightness of Being by Milan Kundera." My grandmother passed when I was young, maybe 8. When I was around 16 I had a dream that I was hanging out with her and talking and catching up. She stood up in the dream to leave and I begged her not to and asked when I could see her again. She said nothing, but pointed to a calendar that had a date circle. I remembered the date when I woke up. It was several months in the future and told my mom about my dream, as she was always interested in that kind of stuff. Several months go by and the date and the dream is approaching within the next few days. My cousin's husband gets killed in a freak car accident, and my parents fly across the country to be with family. They are to be gone over the date in the dream, and my mom, being superstitious about the dream, makes me promise not to leave the house that day. I agree. No big deal. My parents were going to be gone. What did I need to leave for? The day in the dream arrives and my friend calls me up to ride into the city with him. I say no thanks. Late that night, I get a call from him that he was in a bad car accident and his car's totaled. Passenger side all smashed to heck. Had I been with him? I had a weird dream with monsters in my house and crap. Then I wake up and find a monster sleeping next to me and freak out and scream. The dream repeats itself and I wake up again to find the monster next to me. It repeated itself to what seemed like endlessly until I actually woke up sweaty as frick. I was at the store when I heard my boyfriend's ringtone on my phone. I went to answer but couldn't find my phone. I had forgotten it at home because I had plugged it into charge. When I got home I saw a missed call from him at the time I heard the ringtone. When I was a kid I had what I think was a ghost that just stared at me when I was in bed. It just stayed in the doorway and was kind of like a white shadow. It even stayed there after I rearranged my bedroom. It was there for several months. I told my mom and friends about it. Finally, one of my friends told me to ask what it wants. Simple question that I never thought of. The night that I decided to ask, it didn't show up. Never saw it since. I was about 7 or 8. Now I'm 31. My mother's grandma died before my sister was born, so she never had the chance to meet her, which was a shame. She was such a lovely soul. One day my sister was playing in the backyard in the sand pit. My parents were just on the porch with our grandparents drinking coffee. My mum glances over to my sister, 3 years old when this happened, and she sees her looking at nothing and talking, almost as if she was having a conversation with somebody. My mum wasn't fazed. It's somewhat normal for young kids to have imaginary friends or exhibit left of center behavior, but nonetheless, she thought she'd just walk over to see what was going on. She sits in the sand pit next to her and asks her who she's talking to. My sister replies with, "I'm talking to Nana." That's a bit strange because Nana is still on the porch drinking her coffee, but okay, she'll entertain my sister. What do you mean? Nana is sitting over there. My sister, still not really looking at my mum, just replies with your Nana. At this point, my mum is just simply WTFing all the way into the house. As soon as she heard this, she grabbed a photo album, took a photo of her nan in her favorite dress and walked back to my sister. She asked me sister to tell her what Nana looked like and what she was wearing. Described it to the dot. My sister was never shown these photos. I, who was alive and had met her, couldn't have described her to even half the accuracy. Just nope. I was home alone on a stormy night and had a migraine. After a few hours of laying in bed, I passed out. When I woke up, my 250-pound desk was moved across the room, near the door. Now, the issue with this is that I'm not even 120 pounds. Searched my house frantically, hoping nobody was there, but for an explanation, nothing was found. Alarm was still on. My heart was still racing. When I was maybe about 10, I was watching a TV show in my room while my older sisters watched the same show in the lounge. They were being mean and wouldn't let me watch in the same room as them. Anyway, halfway through the show it starts fast forwarding. Except I wasn't watching it from a video, it was playing in real time. The fast forwarding went on for well over a minute until I decided to run down to ask my sisters what was happening. When I got to the lounge I noticed the same show was running perfectly, no fast forwarding. I ran back to my room and it was still fast forwarding. I was confused and freaked out and I think I just changed the channel. My family just laughed at me when I told them, but it still confuses me. I assumed the show was trying to frick with people by purposely making it seem like it was fast forwarding, but it was only on my TV and it went on for so long. I was on a cemetery. For some reason I took a path that I have never taken and I found a tombstone with my own name and surname on it. A little background. This is one of my earliest memories, so I was probably between ages 2 and 3, and I lived in a ranch-style home in a nice neighborhood. The only people at home were me and my mom. My sister was at school and my dad was working. It's a nice day out, probably right around noon. It's hot, so we've got the front door open with the screen door locked. I'm sitting on the couch in the living room, which is only 2 or 3 feet from the door, playing with a toy cash register. I look up from my toy and see a man standing behind the screen door. I don't remember him walking up the driveway, just him suddenly being there. He's wearing a police outfit. I'm confused, and he just kind of smiles at me. I should mention that I wasn't scared at all. There was a policeman at the screen door and in my young mind there was nothing off about that. So I called to my mom that there was a man at the door. My mom was in the kitchen, which was attached to the living room, so it didn't take long for her to come to me. She walked into the room and immediately I could tell something was very, very wrong. She paused once she saw the man, and then power walked straight for me, picked me up, and ran into the hallway where we couldn't be seen from the door. I remember being held close to her chest and being extremely confused. She looked extremely frightened. We stayed there for a while, and eventually when we came back out, the man was gone. The memory ends there. Nearly 2 decades later I still don't have a clue what happened that day. A few years ago I brought it up with my mom, but she kind of just brushed off the question and I didn't push it. Now I'm just afraid to ask. This happened back when I was dating the guy I eventually married. His name was Todd. It was in the 90s. No cell phones or caller ID. I was at home and the phone rang. I answered it and it was a guy who said, "Is Cindy there?" I said, "Yeah, that's me." He responded with, "Hi, it's Todd," and we proceeded to have a 5-minute conversation. After a while he mentions a name I don't recognize. I said so and asked for clarification. After a little back and forth, we realize we are the wrong Cindy and the wrong Todd. So, he called a wrong number and got me. He's dating a Cindy and I'm dating a Todd. It ranks amongst the strangest phone call I've ever gotten. Once, in primary school, I was standing next to the flagpole in the main field. I don't recall what I was doing, but I was surrounded by children running around and playing. I looked up, and suddenly, I felt as though an enormous quantity of water had been dropped on my head, like a swimming pool's worth. I could feel the cold water running over me, turbulent, as though I were in a stormy ocean swell. I remember panicking and flailing about, gasping for breath. Then it ended, just as suddenly as it had begun. I looked about, and all the children were running around and playing like before, as though nothing had happened at all. No one even glanced in my direction. I ran my hands over my clothes, but they were completely dry. I looked up and saw a lone seagull perched on the flagpole. It spread its wings and flew away lazily. One day in school, I had a blue pen on my book and a red pen in my hand. I heard sirens drive by and looked out the window. When I looked back down, my blue pen was replaced with a red pen. I then had 2 red pens and no blue pens. I was brushing my teeth once and I swear I saw, for a split second, myself looking down in the mirror. Not my experience, but my mother's, and I was with her at that time. My mother went to the doctor and she needed to do some breathing tests for her lungs. She never smoked in her life. I went with her. She needed to breathe very hard through a small tube with a clip on her nose, in different ways for like 1 hour. She told me it really hurt and she went dizzy. After the first few minutes she started to cry because it felt like the scariest thing she had ever done. She said it needed to be done, so we continued when she had mained up a little bit. Something like after 45 minutes, when she just did the so-called hard punch breath, it was like she died instantly. Her skin turned pale, empty eyes, no breath, no movements, and didn't react to anything we said when we said something or touched her for like 1 minute. Suddenly she came back to life. Normal skin color, bright eyes, but very confused. We paused for like 5 minutes and continued to finish the last few easier tests. After that she told she was seeing me, the doctor, and herself from above her body for a few seconds. Then she looked up and she saw her mother, my grandmother, who was already dead for plus 20 years. My grandmother pushed her down back into her body and disappeared. She didn't connect with her body directly for a few seconds. She said she was moving but her body didn't, and she didn't felt anything. Then she connected again. May seem stupid, but I lost my glasses. Took them off to wash my face. Came back. 30 seconds later they were gone. Searched my house with mom and brother for 3 hours. Finally assumed I somehow flushed them. Got new glasses. 2 weeks later I come home from work and set my work shoes next to my desk. Decide maybe an hour later to go out. Reach for my shoes. Glasses are on top of my shoes that I set down an hour ago. Perfectly folded. Got a DVD back from a friend after several months, and when I put it back on the shelf, it was already there. So I have the same DVD twice since then. SHHH. Like this video, but quietly so you don't wake up the sleeping papa. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check out another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.